What's going on, guys? Raymond here. I'm back with another video. So today we're going to look at how we can create just a simple application using React.js. So this is the application which we are going to create. So we are going to be searching for GitHub users. So you can search maybe for this. It will just bring those users containing the characters we are searching. Okay, so how are we going to do this? This data is not on a computer, it's just on an external API. So it's on this URL, so we'll be able to fetch this data and render it in our web browser. Okay, so let's get started. So the things that we are going to learn, we are going to use the fetch method, going to use the useState and useEffect hooks, as well as the map and filter methods in React. Okay, so let's get started. So on my desktop here, I'm going to create a folder here, then open this folder with a text editor of my choice. So in this case, I'm using Visual Studio Code. You can use that. Then you can toggle the terminal by just going to terminal, then new. But I'm on Windows, so I've just hold down Control and backtick, then this terminal will pop up. Okay, then within that, I'm going to say to just initialize a React application, which I'm going to say npx, then create, then dash, then react, then dash, then app, then leave a space. Then if you haven't given your application a name, you can just name it, but in this case we just install it in that folder. So I just press a dot, then hit enter. So this is going to install an application in that folder, but I've already installed this application because it takes some time, so I just cancel it and open a folder in which I've already installed that application. So I'll just open this folder here and open it with Visual Studio Code. Then once that opens, again you toggle the terminal. So these files and folders are going to pop up. So you see we have node modules, we have the public folder and the source, and these other packet.json. So what I'll do, I'll just run the application by saying npm start, then hit enter. So to do this, I've also installed Node, so you can install Node and Visual Studio Code. Okay, now the application has started, so this is going to load whatever this application holds. So you can see successfully compiled by Webpack. So you see now the application is live. So when I try to change something here, the change is instant, okay, without even reloading the browser. So you can open up this folder here, which is the source folder, which contains the app.js. So when we change this here, let me just put this side by side so that you guys can see. Okay, so when we change this to maybe remove it, then we just say hello, then save the changes. Then okay, see the application has crashed. There should be something wrong. Let's just go back. Okay, we removed something there. So when you change this to just hello, then save the changes, then you're going to see the change is instant. Okay, so this is how React works. So we are just going to remove everything here, just except this div. So application runs in this div. So if you create something out of this, the application is going to crash. So whatever we write should be within that div. Okay, so I'll just save this. So I'll just remove some of these things like a logo because we do not need it. So let's just clean up the application a bit. So we have in the source folder, we can just remove this app.test, hold down Control, then index.css, which contains star and this logo and just these, then right click, then delete. Okay, make sure you read through to make sure you are deleting the right stuff. Then in public folder, this is just an icon and these are just images, so I'll just hold down Control again and delete these images. Okay, so we are just remaining with index.html, and these are just comments. They should not scare us, so just remove all the comments. Okay, so this is just a title. So our application lies in this div with the ID of root. Okay, so just save that. So when you go to index.js, you see that the index.js contains the render method, which is rendering the whole of our application here. So this is grabbing the ID in the index.html and render our application. Okay, so you can just familiarize yourself with this boilerplate for React. So now we save. We can see that we have nothing because we haven't put anything there. So where there is JavaScript, I'll just change this to React, JavaScript React, so that I can have some suggestions while I'm typing. So I'll just say H2. So here I'll just say search up. So it's just the title that we are going to give our application. Okay, now my bad. Okay, so we can see that it should display our application. Let me just reload this. Okay, so you see we have search up. Okay, so we are now almost ready to start creating our application. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to search the users from that URL. So we are going to use the fetch method to fetch data from the API. So here I'll just define a constant variable which says universal resource locator is equal to just a URL that we're going to use. So I'll just get this URL from this. Okay, so this is our API where we are going to get this information. So I'll just put it in there. So here we are going to define a function which is going to fetch that data. So we'll just say const get data. It's just equal to an arrow function. So just say function which is going to return some stuff there. Again, we are just going to store some values there. So we are going to store a response which we are going to get. So that response is just going to fetch. Then there we're passing the URL. Then let's also store another variable which is just a result. So say const result is just equal to that response. Then we have to convert that to JSON data. Save the changes. Okay, now after we do that, we can now just console.log. Let's log that to the console so that we can see our result. Okay, let's save the changes. Now when we go to the browser and we open up our application there, then right click, then click on inspect, then go to the console. We see that we still don't have that data there. So reason being, we haven't called this function here, so we can just call it which is get data, then save the changes. Okay, so you see we have an error which says error or trying to do that response.json is not a function because we are trying to fetch this data from an external source. So this is, we are going to use asynchronous JavaScript. You can read more about async function, so you can just say async there. Then even here on the search you can just say await, as well as on the response we can just say await, then save the changes. And when we go back and let's reload this, now you are going to see that we have got these two array of objects here. So we have all these. Okay, so these are coming from this. You can see login, for example, this name. So when you come here, you see login that name. Okay, so we have successfully fetched the data and we are able to see it. Now, how are we going to render it? So we have the access to the data. So as long as we can bring it here, we have that access. So to render it, we need to use state. Okay, so we need to come here and define our state variables. So I'm going to say const, then I'll just call this as a list. Then here just say set list. This is just a common way of using state, but you can call this anything. So just say use state. Then on top there, you have to import use state from React. Then there I'm just going to pass in an empty array. So save the changes. Now when we go back here, I'll just clear the console. When you go back here and click on this arrow, I've installed React Developer Tools so that we can be seeing what we are doing. You can do the same as well. Okay, so when we go here, just need to go to components. Let me just reload this. We are going to see we have got app here, which is the name for our application. Then we come here, we are going to see that we have this state here. Okay, so that is the state. For instance, if I change this to I put in an object, so the state would just be an object. Okay, so when we go there, you see we have an object. Okay, so we have state. So state is going to help us to have access to what we are fetching there. Okay, so instead of console.login here, we can set the state to be this data. So that's how state works. So we can just say set that list. Okay, now instead of console.login, we are now having access to this. So the beautiful thing is that we can now look through this list here, because this list have got access to this state, and this state now have got access to this data that we are getting here. So let us go ahead and look through. Okay, so I'll just go down here, but I'll just uncomment this, then save the changes, then just go down. I'll comment it later. So I'll uncomment it later. So let's now look through. So I'll just put in an empty object there. Then you're just going to call this list, because this list now contains this data. Okay, so here if we remove it, which means we don't have that data, but if we bring it back, which means that list now I've got access to this information, and this which is being gotten from this function here. So I'll just say list dot, we are going to use the map method just to look through. You can use a for loop, there is no harm, just for learning purposes, but we use order array methods. Then here we are going to return just a div, because we need to wrap everything into a div as per React requirement. Otherwise we can have a lot of unnecessary errors. So I'll just call this as h3. So within that we are just going to call every list there, then dot whatever is in the API data here. We can call this login.id. All this information we can still grab it just here. So I'll just get the login. Then here we need to use the useEffect hook. So I'll just cut this. Then just on top here, I'll just say use effect. So I'll just come here. Then the useEffect is going to accept another function there, so which you are going to pass in. Then within that I'll just call that function. Then I'll just pass in an empty array. Just this means that this function here is just going to run once. Then we are going to save the changes. Now when we go back to our application, now we see that we have got the data here. Okay, so we have now successfully fetched the data and as well as render it in our application. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do, we are also going to fetch another type of data, which is we can fetch almost anything that we want from here, but I'll just get this URL here, which is just an avatar that contains an image. So we'll just come down here, then I'll just say image, then for the source of the image I'll just return an object which is going to contain that list, then dot that avatar. So I'm going to save the changes. Then when we go back, you see now that we have the username as well as the email. Okay, so we are making progress, guys, but now you can see that this is just in the middle because our application contains some predefined styles which we can just remove. So I'll just remove this, then I'll just do a reset, then I'll just say padding of 0, then I'll just also remove the margin to 0 and just set the box size into border box, then save the changes. Now you see that all the styles will be removed and everything will just be pushed back to here. Okay, now the other thing that we are going to do, I'm not going to dwell very much on styling this, but let's implement the search function. So now for us to search for something, we need an input form where we are going to set. So I'll just say input, then within that I'm just going to put a placeholder, just something which will be suggesting to say this is just for typing. So I'll just say search. Okay, so now when we save this and we go back, we just see that we have that search there. Okay, so let's go back and try to see what we can do. Now we need for this search form to have access to the to this information, we need to set the state as well. So let's define the state variables. So we are just going to call this as search, comma, then set search. So this is this should be uppercase, but it needs not to be. It's just a way of naming just this. So here we are just going to pass in an empty nothing there. So save the changes, nothing is going to happen because we have just defined this. So now here in the input, we want, when the user types, we want to grab that information. So we use an event called onChange. Okay, so when we change that, we want to grab which is coming from the user. So we are just going to pass in an event there, then we're just going to say set. We are going to call that set search. Okay, which is our state there. We are going to call the state. So within that state, we are going to pass in event.target.value. This means whatever the user will be typing, will be able to grab that. Let's save the changes and see what will happen. So now when we go here and we start typing, we see we haven't seen anything, but when we go to inspect, then we just go to these components, then yeah, we are going to see that. Then let's do some typing. So we see still nothing is happening, so let's go back and check. Okay, so here we are calling the set search, okay, which is okay. Then event.target.value. Okay, now let's find out what is just okay. So this is because here we are not calling the useState, so we didn't call it. So just say useState. So then when we save, we should be able to see our application there now has got the state, which is just empty. So when you start typing something, now you see that we are getting those input values. Okay, so now we are able to grab what the user is typing. So what can we do with that? Okay, so that's the next big thing that we need to work on. Okay, so let's go back here. So when the user starts typing, we want to start searching for that. So to do that, we are going to use a filter method. So within here where there is a list, so we are just going to say dot filter. Okay, so a filter method is just more like the map method. So let's just call this as an item, which is going to return something here. Okay, so we are going to return, so we can just say return. Okay, what are we going to return? So we are going to return what the user is searching. So just say we are going to return the search. Then if the search is equal to empty, for example, okay, if the search is equal to empty, what the user has typed in is just nothing. The user is not typing anything. So what we can do is we are going just to return that particular item. Okay, that's what we are going to do. Then these are just ternary operators. Else we are going to return that item dot, then what the user is typing in, it's the login, then dot this should just include this is just normal JavaScript, so you can read more about includes, how it works. Includes the search that the user is typing in. Okay, so let's save this change and see what is going to happen. So when we search, now you see our application now is working. Okay, because when we search maybe for MOJO, then M, you see we have just remained with this. So our application is now fully working, but when we type in capital letters, you see we don't have anything. Okay, so to do that, we can change this to what the user is typing. So we can say dot login dot we can just say to, we change this to lowercase. So to lowercase, lowercase is just a function. So even this search, we can just change this search dot to lowercase. Okay, lowercase as a function as well, then save the changes. Okay, then we can go back. Now even if we type a capital letter, say R, it will still convert that to just small letter. If we type small letter, it will convert to capital letter. Okay, so this is now fully working. We have achieved every functionality that we wanted to achieve. So maybe for styling purposes, we can just let me show you what I was doing. Let me just pick one of the tags there. So I'll just say the image. So the image, you can say width. We need not to style this, but I'll just do a quick one. So just say 200 pixels, then with a height of 200 pixels, then save the changes. Then when you go back, you see we have those images with the same height and width. So the other thing we can also do is we can just call the border radius. So you can just say border radius of 50%. Okay, so when you check now, you see there are those rounded borders. You can even reduce these images, maybe just 200 pixels to make them even smaller. Okay, let me just do this. Okay, so you see we have that. Then you can also grab, we need not to style this, the application is complete. Everything I'm just doing is just addition. So you can just grab this div, you can give it maybe a class name. We don't use classes in React. We use class names to distinguish a class, because a class is a reserved word in React, and unlike in when we are using plain HTML. Okay, so you can just say container. This is a container, so you can save this. Then you can just go into this, so you can just say dot container. Then we want to display this as flex. Then when you save, you see we have a name and an image, but let me just change the order so that the image is first, then the name. Okay, so you see we have the name and the image. Then we can also say align items just to the center. Okay, so now you see we have those there in the center. Then what else we can do? Maybe we can just give a little bit of margin, just to give it some spacing. So we can say margin maybe over 10 pixels. Okay, just a little bit of some spacing. Okay, but I'm not going to continue styling this. I think we have achieved the main thing, which was the functionality. We can search, then we can also do other things, just like in the original application here, which was this one. Okay, so guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you learned one or two things. And